fuel is a lot easier to use. Now, Dr. Goddard did a lot with different kinds of rockets. He actually created about 214 different patents throughout all of his experimentation. But one of the things that he always had to have with his rockets was fire. You can't exactly have a rocket if you don't have fire. So, what are the 3 things that I need in order to create fire? Somebody said fuel. Very good, I need fuel. What else do I need? Oxygen. What's the last thing I need? What do you think? Fire, very good, otherwise known as ignition or a heat source. So, I need fuel, I need oxygen, and I need an ignition source. Well, at this point in time at our Dr. Goddard show, we would do several different experiments that would demonstrate this. We would be able to do some really cool explosions. One of the explosions that we have is pretty big, and you can see it right here. If you're interested in that kind of thing, definitely go to the Dr. Goddard show at the Cosmo. Unfortunately, because liquid oxygen is extremely dangerous to travel with, I was not able to bring any with me. But I was able to bring something very, very similar to it. This is known as liquid nitrogen. Liquid nitrogen is very similar to liquid oxygen. I'm going to pour a little bit out, and then we will talk about it for just a little bit. All right, this right here, ladies and gentlemen, is liquid nitrogen. As you can probably see, it has a lot of vapor around it, and yes, it is super, super, super cool. As a matter of fact, liquid nitrogen is negative 300 degrees Fahrenheit, which means that at room temperature, which is what we're at right now, it will boil, causing all of this vapor to come out, and if you were able to come any closer, you would see that it is boiling very vigorously down inside. Now, liquid nitrogen, unlike liquid oxygen, is not flammable, which means that if I light a match and I put it down in here, it puts the match out. If I were to do that with liquid oxygen, the match would actually burn a whole lot brighter, because the more oxygen you have, the better your fire is going to burn. Now, I get a question very often of whether or not I can touch liquid nitrogen. If you think I should touch it, go ahead, raise your hand. If you think I should not touch it, go ahead, raise your hand. Got a whole room of doubters here today. Alright, well, I am very hot. This lab coat's pretty hot. It's a pretty hot day, so I think I'm going to cool off by dipping my hand inside of the liquid nitrogen. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. My hand is perfectly fine. This is because of something known as the Leidenfrost effect. Now, the Leidenfrost effect is basically this. When I stick my hand into the liquid nitrogen, my hand is 400 degrees hotter than the liquid nitrogen is, which means my hand is boiling the liquid that is in here, which creates a gas bubble around my hand that protects my hand for the brief second that I stick my hand into the liquid nitrogen. That's why I am totally fine when I stick my hand in. But if I were to take a balloon, as you can see right here, this balloon is pretty stretchy, and I am to stick it inside of my liquid nitrogen for a lot longer. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is what would happen to my hand if I were to stick it in there for very much longer. So definitely not something you want to do at home. Just for your guys' information, in order to get liquid nitrogen, you do need to have a special license. So don't be thinking you can go out and play with liquid nitrogen. Never do that. It is extremely dangerous. Alright, so we have talked a little bit about different kinds of fuel. The liquid fuel that Dr. Goddard eventually ended up using is known as gasoline. Now, the reason why I brought some liquid nitrogen was to show you guys exactly how similar it is to liquid oxygen. Liquid oxygen is flammable, unlike my liquid nitrogen right here. And liquid oxygen would actually have a blue color, which is why the sky around us looks blue, because of all the oxygen that we have in the air. Well, one of the things that I get asked a lot is whether or not it's actually the liquid that is burning. The answer is no. Liquids don't burn. That's something that we teach very often. And I can demonstrate this by showing you. If I put a little bit of my secret rocket fuel inside my test tube right there, and I am to take a match, you will notice that during this process, I will never stick the match all the way down to the liquid. will burn. That is because it is the gases around the liquid that is actually burning, which means that it's gases that burn, but not the liquid. But in order to get the gas, we do need to have some liquid. I can also demonstrate this in one more way. If I bring out my little secret rocket fuel and my lighter, there we go. So, as you can tell, I was using a spray bottle with my secret rocket fuel right there. Now, a spray bottle takes the liquid and turns it into a vapor. And don't worry, this is just water. It is not my secret rocket fuel. It takes it through an ejector plate up at the very top here, which turns the liquid into small vapor, which then turns into a gas, which then is able to burn. Well, not only did Dr. Goddard figure out that he could use liquid fuel to fuel his engines, he also discovered that he had to work with Newton's 3 laws of motion in order to get his rockets to work. You see, Newton made up 3 laws of motion that we teach very commonly in school today. The first law states that an object in motion will stay in motion, or an object at rest will stay at rest, until acted upon by another force. So if you will see right here, I take my little test tube and I place it right there. Everybody go ahead and look at that really closely. It's not going to move, simply because there is no force outside of it causing it to move. However, as soon as I move it, it will move because of the force outside of it. Another good way of demonstrating this is if you have a wheelchair and you take that wheelchair and you push it, it is going to keep going until it is slowed down by either friction or rocks or something else that got in its way. That is Newton's first law of motion. Now, the second law of motion is force equals mass times acceleration. It means the bigger something is and the more acceleration it has, the more force it has. Today, we have a rocket known as the Saturn V. The Saturn V rocket stands 363 feet tall, and it is the biggest rocket and the rocket with the most force that we have today. This is the rocket that took Americans to the moon. We are hoping by the time we get going to Mars, we will have a bigger rocket with more acceleration and more force. Obviously, we will need a little bit more power to get us to Mars. And the last law is every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Obviously, rockets have this. You will see the rocket going up while the flames are coming down on the other side. Another good way of thinking about this is a fire hose. If you grab a fire hose and the water comes out one end, it's probably going to push the hose the other way. And lastly, the other way that you can think about this is if somebody comes up behind you and suddenly decides to slap you, your initial response might be to turn around and slap them back. Kids, never do that. All right. So Dr. Goddard created about 214 different patents. In just a moment here, we are going to be launching our very own little rocket right in here. And no, it is not a Hooligan bottle, contrary to the popular belief. This is in fact a rocket. We have our combustion chamber right up here, which is where our fuel is going to mix. We have a throat right down in here, and we have a nozzle. Now, if I were to close off this end right here, I would have essentially, well, a bomb. We want a rocket today, so I will not be doing that. However, when Dr. Goddard was working with his rockets, he actually had some other problems of his own. You see, his fuel was so hot that when it was burning through this, it was burning through his material, which meant that his rockets were going in all sorts of very funny different directions, which you don't want. It was causing him to burn down things all around here where he was launching his rockets. So he created one of his 214 patents, which is known as curtain cooling. And we can demonstrate this by using 2 balloons. This balloon right here has a little bit of water in the bottom of it. It is very cool water, and as you can see, it does drop, which means there is water inside of it. I also will blow up a balloon right here that will not have any water on it. We will see what happens when I put both of them under a flame. Not have any water and it actually popped. This one did, and yes, the bottom of this is a little warm from the flame. However, the reason why it did not pop is because of the water inside of it. The water inside keeps the rubber cool enough that it's not going to allow the flame to heat it through so that it won't pop. This is known as curtain cooling, and it is one of Dr. Robert Goddard's inventions. You see, he would take his fuel, which was gasoline, he would turn it super ice cold, and he would run it in little tubes all the way up and down his rocket engines, which cooled it enough that when he was firing, it wouldn't melt through his material. Alright, so I think we are very close to the end of our show. I think in order to conclude the show, we should have a little bit of a rocket launch. What do you guys think? Maybe no rocket launch? Alright, let's start. I'm going to take a little bit of our rocket fuel right here. We're going to mix it up in there pretty well. And in just a moment, I'm going to have you guys help me with a countdown. Coming out to Dr. Goddard's lab at the Cosmo here so that we can do some more experiments. But before you guys leave, this is always kind of the highlight of the show. I do have a little bit of liquid nitrogen right here, so if you are a kid and you are interested in seeing it a little bit closer, I will have you come make a little semicircle right here, and I will dump it on the ground. Because it is a rather hot day, this is going to go away pretty quickly, so you're going to have to be pretty fast to see it. All right. Alrighty, are we ready?